Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me clearly? If you can you give me a quick thumbs up? Okay. Yes, I see many thumbs up. So thank you all for being early. So I am Simone, and today's topic will be on foods for a brighter mind. So this will be what I'm sharing today, which is about our brains. So I'm sure everyone would be um very interested in this because of course we use our brains every day for many different things, the different daily activities that we do, and even when we go to work as well. So just a brief, quick introduction about myself. So I'm Simone and I'm a nutritionist. So some things I do include having different kinds of corporate talks. So I go down to do different talks, and I also go down to check on children's meals, especially now when the government is focusing on having a healthier generation, healthier next generation. I go down and check that the children in Singapore are eating healthily. Yeah, so these are some things I do. And I have also had some research before on also foods, on which kind of food can actually help us in our performance and our nutrition, how it affects our mental health as well. Okay, so I hope that this session can also be as interactive as possible. So feel free to just type into the chat box if you have any questions with regards to the topic on nutrition. Yeah, and if I ask any questions, also feel free to just shout out the answer or type it into the chat box. Okay, so let me begin. Okay, so just to run through a quick outline for today. So today, these are some points that I'll be talking about. So firstly, will be the overview of the brain and its functions, some of the essential nutrients needed for our brain, some foods to boost our brain power as well as their benefits, and lastly, to incorporate power foods into our diet. So at the end, I'll end off with a quick cooking demonstration as well, so everyone can look forward to that. Okay, so what are some of our brain functions? So we know that our brain actually controls how we think, how we feel, and what we remember every day, and how we move and talk as well. So it acts like a control system. And just some interesting facts about our brain is that our brain has around 100 million neurons. So that's around the number of stars that we have in the Milky Way galaxy. So that's really, really many neurons. And it also consumes around 20% of the total body energy, despite only representing 2% of our entire body mass. Yeah, so our brain is actually a very, very powerful function. And of course, like any other organs, like our lungs and our heart, the brain is affected by our diet, so what we eat, and our exercise also. So how much we exercise, all this affects our brain and how it functions. Okay, so now let's see what is the role of nutrition in our brain, which is what I will be zooming into today. So research studies actually shows that our gut and our brain are more linked than we think. So this is something that, I did some research on, that actually what we eat in our food, when it goes into the stomach, it will actually promote some healthier bacteria, and this also affects our mental health and how we feel in general. Okay, so we can see here that the role of nutrition in our brain, of course, it keeps our brains functioning well and it increases the alertness of our brains. So I'm sure many of us here, we work as well, or even when we study or even read different books or watch different shows, it is our brain that actually gives us this alertness. Of course, it boosts our memory, and this is something that we want to take note of, especially when we age. We want to make sure that we can still remember things well, reduce the risk of stroke as well. So the food we eat, it prevents certain blood clots in our brain, and this would reduce stroke. And also lastly, also to delay the onset of age-related cognitive decline. So this is, for example, like dementia, which we know that some of us if we grow older, we are also worried that we might have. So all this is the role of nutrition and how it plays a part in our brain function. Okay, so what are some foods that are good for our brain? Maybe everyone can just type into the chat box. So what do you think are some foods that can be healthy for our brain? Can be anything that you think. Oh, many of you send me directly saying walnut. Yes, walnut is a very healthy nut, and I'm sure many of us has heard before online, especially that walnut can help our brains and it can, just be very, very good for our brains due to the fat inside. Oh, yes, almonds, ginkgo, many, many kinds of nuts. Yes, so all these, they have many kinds of healthy fat that I will be talking about more later. Salmon, our fatty fish. Yeah, thank you all for your answers. So all of you are right. So later I will be going through all these one by one. Okay. Okay, so I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, My Healthy Plate. How many of you have seen it before? You can just give me a thumbs up if you have. Anyone? Just give me a quick thumbs up reaction. Yes, yes, I see many people have seen this before. Yeah, so I'm sure we're all familiar with My Healthy Plate. So if you have not seen this before, no worries. We'll be quickly going through this together. So we can see that for My Healthy Plate, we have 3 sections in this. So firstly is the yellow portion, which is our brown rice and wholemeal bread. And then we can see the blue portion, which is our meat and others. And lastly, half of the plate, which is our fruits and vegetables. So sometimes when we see this, we think that, oh yeah, My Healthy Plate can be used in our daily meals, our breakfast, our lunch and dinner. But now when you bring it into, relating this to our brain, so how does this actually relate? So actually our brain, just like any other organ and in our body, we also need the essential nutrients and different kinds of carbohydrates, protein, and fiber to keep it functioning and it's at its optimal. So all these are equally as important for our brain as it is for any other part of our body. So when we look at brown rice and wholemeal bread, okay, let's just see this portion first. So what are some of the, maybe you can throw out your answers. What do you think are some other kinds of wholemeal options besides just brown rice and wholemeal bread? Maybe you can type it quickly into the chat box. What do you think are some other options besides your brown rice and your wholemeal bread as well? That is wholemeal. Quinoa? Yes. Yes, your oats. Yes, yes, all this. Okay, just a quick question. So do you think there's any difference between your regular kind of oats, such as your, not, maybe more of your Quaker oats that we eat, those that's very instant, as compared to like, let's say your rolled oats. Do you think there's any kind of difference between these two? Yes? Fiber contents, yes, okay. But in actual fact, both of them usually contain around the same amount of fiber. If not, one of it, like let's say the raw oat, just slightly more, but more or less it's around the same. So what is their difference? So their difference is actually just in how processed they are and in terms of their nutrients and how much vitamins or minerals they can give us, both are actually very similar in content. So we do not need to worry so much about that when we are purchasing our oats. And the thing that maybe we can take a bit more of, like take note of, would be the amount of sugar that is added or flavor that is added in some of our instant oats. And chia seed, yes, chia seed also has many different kinds of healthy fat. Yeah, and I won't really consider chia seed as directly a whole meal, but more of something that can provide us with different kinds of fat and fiber as well. Okay, so moving on, there's the meat and others. So we can see here that there's the fish, and if let's say we are vegetarian, we can opt for tofu. So these are some of the meat sources. And lastly, the fruits and vegetables. So fruits and vegetables, we can see there's apple, your green leafy vegetables. So all of these, I will be touching more and going in detail in the next few slides. Okay, so now let's move into the different macronutrients. So the first one would be our carbohydrate. So our carbohydrates, they break down into glucose, and this glucose will be used as the main source of energy for our brain. And our brain is dependent on this glucose and sugar for its main fuel. So our brain functions such as thinking, memory, and learning, they're closely linked to glucose levels and how effectively the brain uses this fuel. So if let's say there isn't enough glucose in the brain, then the neurotransmitters, which is our brain's chemical messengers, they will not be produced, and communication between the neurons would break down. And if we have hypoglycemia, which is a common condition for diabetes, which you have a low amount of blood sugar in your blood, then this can also lead to a loss of energy for your brain function, and in turn lead to poor attention and cognitive function. So from this, we can see that actually glucose is very, very important for our brain. Okay, and we can see here, like what some of you mentioned just now, your oats, let's see, there's the oats, and different kinds of bread, quinoa. Some of them are wholemeal, and they are higher in dietary fiber and a good source of vitamin D as well. So all these, they provide your brain with a steady glucose supply. Okay, so our brain, it cannot store up our glucose. So let's say if we are eating a product, like let's say your white bread, that is more of a refined carbohydrate, then there will be a quick spike in the blood glucose level, and your brain will not be able to store that glucose level first. So it will be good if we consume whole grain products, which is also known as our complex carbohydrates. So this provides a slow release of energy for our brain so that our brain can be functioning at an optimal. And we can see that we can also avoid our different kinds of sugar, sweetened beverages, and our foods that's high in sugar, as this high sugar diet can actually affect our brain aging, and can cause our memory to deteriorate also in the long run if we keep on consuming all these very sugary foods or sugar sweetened beverages. And of course, to take note, how many of you usually would have food coma, let's say after a meal? You would always feel like, oh, I'm so tired and restless after a meal, and I just feel like going to sleep. Yes? Yes, after a heavy meal, yes. Okay. Sometimes, so actually food coma, it occurs when we are consuming a lot of food that is high in glycemic index. So what is foods that is high in glycemic index? So this is, for example, your white rice, your white bread, all these that are not your complex carbohydrates, not your whole grain products, or your refined carbohydrates, or your many sugar sweetened beverages. So all these actually would cause this melatonin to form in your brain. So there are many chemical reactions which causes this melatonin to be released, and this melatonin will actually result in your sleepiness. And that's why you would feel so sleepy after a heavy meal, or when you're consuming a food with a lot of sugar or which is very high in glycemic index. And that's why, to avoid that, what we can do is to consume, we can use My Healthy Plate. So we just consume a range of nutrients and proteins, carbohydrates, fiber, and also consume more of our whole grain products as well. Okay. Okay, now moving on to the function of our protein. So what do protein help us in? Of course, we know that protein help us to build our muscles. Yeah, and in this case also for the brain, it helps us to form our neurotransmitters. Okay, so what is these neurotransmitters? So neurotransmitters, they're actually chemical messengers in our brain, and their function is to transmit signals from your nerve cells to your target cells. So all these neurotransmitters, they will help us to regulate our bodily functions. For example, our breathing, our digestion. So all these neurotransmitters are doing the job and sending the signals to our brain and telling the target cells what to do. And so this neurotransmitters is important. Okay, so let's see how this protein works to break down our food into neurotransmitters. Okay, so we can see here in this diagram, so when we eat our protein, for example, maybe we just consume some chicken breast, we're eating some chicken meat, chicken wings, and there's this protein. So when we digest it into our stomach, into our intestines, they will break down into simpler units. So these simpler units, they'll be called your amino acids. So your amino acids, there's many different types, 20 types, and there's 12 amino acids that are essential for us. Of course, when all these amino acids are formed, they're actually building blocks for our neurotransmitters, which was what I mentioned just now, that is our brain communication chemicals. And then lastly, it will transmit the signals. These neurotransmitters, they will transmit the signals to different parts of your body to carry out the task, like what I mentioned. So these include your breathing, your heart rate, digestion, your mood, concentration, appetite, your muscle movement. So all this protein not only is just important to build your muscles, but it's also important for our brain as they build our neurotransmitters as well. Okay, so now let's see what if we consume inadequate protein. So what if we do not consume enough protein? Okay, so research have actually found that our protein intake is associated with better performance on cognitive function and less cognitive decline. So if we are consuming inadequate protein, then our messengers will not be working well. There might be some cognitive problems that we might face and some slower reaction time. For example, when you're driving and when you're supposed to stop, maybe your reaction time will be a bit slower. So how much protein do we know that we should consume? So when we look back at My Healthy Plate, so we can consume around 3 servings of protein in a day. So one serving would be around your palm size. So everyone can just take a look at your palm here. So this is the amount that you will usually need to eat for one serving. And so 3 times a day. So this is the average amount. But of course, for adults aged 50 and above, then I would recommend that you consume a little bit more protein, add a bit more protein in your diet. Okay, and we can look here that good sources of protein, they help to boost these neurotransmitters. So some of the examples of neurotransmitters, specifically your serotonin and your dopamine. So both your serotonin and your dopamine, they are your happy hormones. So they are the hormones that usually make us happy, they make us feel energized, give us mental clarity, they help us feel more motivated, and gives us a deep sleep as well. So usually your serotonin, they're associated with happiness, your focus, and your calmness. Whereas for your dopamine, usually it's associated with your rewards or motivation. Or for example, when you're taking a roller coaster, that is when you feel such a sense of reward, or yeah, your dopamine actually rises when you take a roller coaster. However, some studies also shows that if we take too much protein in our diet, it can also cause our brain size to shrink. And that's why it's important to not overconsume also, or not stick to a high protein diet for too long a time. Okay. And next definitely would be to go for your high quality protein. So what is this high quality protein? So high quality protein is protein that is complete protein. So it contains all of your essential amino acids. So you have all the kinds of amino acids that we need to be healthy. So most of these can come from your chicken, beef, or fish. So all these animal products, they have all these essential acids that can really help us. And in terms of your plant-based products, some of your tofu, your soy, tempeh, your edamame, all these are also good sources of high-quality protein that we can take also. And we can see here, of course, we can choose our lean protein. So for example, instead of going for your chicken thigh, so your chicken thigh usually contains a bit more fat. Yeah, you can go for your chicken breast instead. Yeah, and we can see that there are many different kinds of lean protein that we can see here, including your egg, tofu, your beans, your legumes that we were talking about just now. Okay, so now just give me a moment to just take a quick screenshot for attendance purposes. One. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to also type it into the chat box. Okay, and moving on. Okay, lastly, of the macronutrients, the 3 macronutrients will be for fat. So now let's see what are some of the functions of fat. So fat is essential for our brain as it keeps our cell membranes intact and it insulates our nerves in our brain. Okay, so we can see in the diagram below that there's some of the very healthy fats, such as your olive oil, your salmons, your avocados. Okay, so how many percent of your brain do you think is made up of fat? Maybe you can just key it into the chat box. Just make a guess. How many percent of your brain? Okay, 10, 30. Okay, that's a good guess. 70. Okay. Okay, thank you all for your answers. Okay, let's see. Let's see for the answer. Okay, Horn, is there an optimum daily amount of protein required for an adult? So yes, there's an optimum amount, and this is called like our recommended daily intake. But for, of course, for adults, for different groups, we have different amounts. So you can take around 20 to 30% of your total calorie intake. But if you want a more visual representation or understanding of how much protein, then you can you can just use my healthy plate. So around 2 to 3 servings of protein is enough. Yeah, so that's in response to Gan Huang, your answer. Yeah. Okay, so now let's move on to see how many percent of our brain is made up of fats. So our brain, yes, so being is right here. So thank you all for your answers. Yeah, your brain is made up of more than 50% of fat. So that's quite a significant amount of fat there. And of course, we should choose our high quality fat. So even when our brain is made up of so much fat and we know that fat is beneficial for our brain, it should still be high quality fat. So what is this high quality fat? So high quality fat includes our polyunsaturated and our monounsaturated fat. And this does not include like our saturated fat, our trans fat. So these saturated fat and trans fat are more of our bad fats that we should try to avoid. So why is this fat important for our brain? So it's a vital component for our cell membranes to ensure that it's flexible. So these fats actually help our brain to maintain its flexibility. And of course, omega-3 is also a type of fat. So omega-3 is a type of polyunsaturated fat. So polyunsaturated fat, it consists there are some kinds of polyunsaturated fat, but one of the more common one is your omega-3 and your omega-6, which are beneficial for your brain function. So your omega-3 and your omega-6, they cannot be made by your body. So we need to take in food to give us this omega-3 and 6. So when we look at omega-3, so omega-3, it consists of your EPA and your DHA, sorry. So these two, we usually see it when we buy our infant products because, yeah, they're very, very beneficial for infant brain development. But even as adults, it's also important for us as the EPA, it helps us to reduce some symptoms of depression and reduces inflammation in our brain as well. And for our DHA, it also helps to our brain in its development and its functions. So all this, it is part of our omega-3. And for omega-6, our body also cannot produce it, but it's usually used for us to gain some energy. Okay, so we can take a look at our omega-3s. So omega-3, like what I mentioned, they are inflammatory compounds, so they anti-inflammatory compounds, so they prevent inflammation in our brain, which in the long term, it can lead to memory loss, such as Alzheimer's, and it has a positive effect on cognitive performance and behavior. It prevents brain shrinkage as well, and your low levels of omega-3 fatty acids has been linked to some of your mood disorders, such as depression or your anxiety. That's why it's important to eat these omega-3 foods. Okay, and I have some questions here. Give me a moment, I'll answer the questions. Okay, so can you get fish oil tablet from the pharmacy? So yes, of course, you can purchase it outside in the pharmacy or any supplement shop, but sometimes due to some certain health conditions as well, for example, some people with dementia, the doctors would prescribe these fish oil tablets as well that will give you your omega-3 fatty acids. Yeah, and is omega supplement good for your body? So, okay, so omega supplement, this is a very interesting and good question as well. So omega supplement, so in terms of a healthy individual, if let's say you are strong, you're healthy, no health conditions, then I would say you do not necessarily need an omega supplement. So you can just include your oily fish or your good fats into your diet, and that will be sufficient. But however, if you are, let's say, having some of your health conditions or early onset of dementia, for example, then that's when omega can be actually healthy. But usually this will be prescribed from a doctor. So you can take in the amount that is from the doctor. Yeah. And for example, for omega also, you can make sure that you consume more of your omega-3. If you, let's say you still want to try out a supplement, you can consume more of omega-3 supplement as compared to your omega-6 supplement. As your omega-3 supplements, most of the time when we intake it from food, we are lacking that as compared to omega-6 when we usually consume quite a huge amount already from our food. For example, from our plant oils, when you consume like our sunflower oil, our peanut oil, all these already provide our body with sufficient omega-6. Is Sacha Inchi oil a good alternative to fish oil? Okay, so that's from Link 2. Okay, so this is something that I'm not too sure about, but yeah, this is something that of course we can look up a bit on. So this Sacha Inchi oil is quite interesting. But of course, I would say that fish oil is usually, there are different kinds, and we should look at one that we should look at the description of the oil and ensure that you can have enough omega-3s and 6 in the adequate amount as well. So for this Sacha Inchi oil, I'm not exactly sure of what it composes of, but if let's say you want to buy it, then that's when you can look at the amount and concentrate of omega-3 and omega-6, or specifically omega-3, relative to the weight of that oil, that fish oil, and compare it to another regular fish oil product. So that's how you can find whether it's a better alternative. Okay, so now I will go back after answering all the questions. I hope that I have answered all of you. Okay, so now let's take a look at what kind of fish and what kind of good fats we can go for. So of course we can go for our oily fish, like some of you mentioned, like our salmon, our tuna. So all these have very beneficial fats for us. And of course we shouldn't deep fry it. So we should go for, let's say, a baked version of it. And we should consume at least all of these around 2 times per week. And for our plant foods, this will be our seeds and our nuts, like many of you mentioned just now. So like, let's say our walnuts and our avocado. So walnuts is definitely very high in omega-3, and that's why it is good for us. Okay. Okay, so let's say, so how much omega-3 should we consume? Okay, so for this, there's a recommended amount that is on HPB's health website guidelines as well. So we can go up there to search it out. But of course, if you are consuming the omega-3, one very important way is that you can look at the amount that you should eat also, that is on the bottle itself of the omega-3. So that's how we know how much we should consume. And if let's say it's from your doctor, prescribed from a doctor, then we should follow what the doctor says to ensure that we are not overeating the amount of omega-3. Oh, but one thing about omega-3 is just to make sure that you need to take note if let's say you're taking omega-3 with any kinds of blood thinners. Like for example, if you're on any medication that includes your blood thinners, then that's when we need to take some caution when we eat our omega-3 supplements, as there might be some interactions between the medication and omega-3 supplements. So that's when we need to follow the doctor's advice as well. Okay, so moving back, so we should of course limit our saturated fat and our trans fat intake. So this will cause a decline in our cognitive functions also if we are eating much of this saturated fat and trans fat. So these are usually found in our baked products. So you can see your pastries, your those products that are baked, and some of your natural products, such as your animal products, your dairy products as well. All this contains trans fat. However, all these are natural occurring and it's in very, very minute quantities. So for all these, we can still consume it. But of course, if it comes to your artificial trans fat, like some of your baked products or some margarine, your hard margarine, then that's when we should reduce the amount of what we consume. Yep, so what I mentioned, it causes a decline in your cognitive function. It will affect your brain's blood supply. Some of it also, yes, it promotes your weight gain and adverse health conditions, which will lead to different chronic conditions in the long run as well. Not only linking to your brain, but it's just very unhealthy for our body in general. Okay, so the examples below is like what I mentioned just now, some of your palm oil, coconut oil, all these are higher in saturated fat. Yes, your butter, lard, your poultry skin, and your ghee. So of course, one way when we are eating our poultry, our chicken, we can remove the skin. So that's removing some of the additional saturated fat in our chicken. Hydrogenated oils and creamer, processed food. So many of these things that we can take note of when we are buying our food. So one One tip is, of course, we can look at the ingredients list of our food when we're purchasing the food to ensure that it does not have trans fat, or we can look at the food labels because some of the food that is trans fat free, they'll be labeled as trans fat free. So we can see the healthier choice symbol on it when we're out shopping, let's say for our groceries. Okay, and of course, the last part we can see is our vitamins and minerals. So these vitamins and minerals is required to boost our brain function. Okay, hold on. I see a question in the chat box. Let me see. Is cold pressed coconut oil a healthy oil? Wow, so that's very interesting question. So many different research actually share. Some research say that, oh, coconut oil can be very beneficial for us, while others might say that, oh, actually it's not so beneficial. So what exactly it is? So if you ask me, I would say personally that coconut oil also it consumes a lot of saturated fat. So I would say that yes, you can use it in moderate amounts, but I would not encourage you to take it in too big a content as well, as coconut oil, it still contains high amounts of saturated fat, which you can lead to many kinds of chronic diseases in the long run if saturated fat is consumed in too high a content. And in this case also, of course, saturated fat will not be good for our brains as well. So of course, you can still consume it, but also to limit your quantity, even though when they say that, oh, coconut oil can be a very healthy oil. Yeah, but we still want to take note of this saturated fat content in coconut oil. Okay, so moving back to our vitamins and minerals. So vitamins and minerals, most of it, they cannot be synthesized by the body. Okay, but there are some that can be. For example, our vitamin D, when we go out into the sun and we have some sun exposure, that can give us some of our vitamin D. And for example, vitamin D, and it also acts as our antioxidants for our vitamins and minerals. So these can cause and it will help our brain to not be inflamed. So of course, if our brain is inflamed, then we might get Alzheimer's or memory loss. All these things will be more common. And vitamins and minerals also, it's a very complex system, but it definitely supports our brain nerves and our brain functions as well. And lastly, it maintains our cognitive function. That's why vitamins and minerals are important. Usually we get this from our fruits and vegetables that we saw just now. So we saw half of the plate, right? That is fruits and vegetables. So for fruits and vegetables, we should consume 2 servings each daily. So very easy to remember. We just remember 2 plus 2. So 2 servings of fruits and 2 servings of vegetables. And of course, we can see that a high intake of our fruits and vegetables is linked to improved cognitive function. Yes, so we can see what are some healthy foods is our blueberries and our walnuts, like what some of you mentioned. And we see that there's a rainbow of fruits here. So we see like the fruits in the shape of a rainbow. So yes, we should consume a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and not only stick to one kind. For example, if some of us like apples or some of us like bananas, we shouldn't just only eat that certain type of fruit for every meal, but we should try to consume a wide variety of fruits and vegetables with different colors. As these different colors also they contains different vitamins and minerals that provides different kinds of antioxidants for our body. And we can see that we can also snack on our raw nuts and have a handful of it per day. So this would help us get some of our vitamins, such as our vitamins B and our vitamin E. So we can see that vitamin B here is associated with a slowing of our cognitive decline, especially in populations who receive early intervention. If let's say they are having some memory loss issues. Yeah, we can see that vitamin E also has a role in delaying our cognitive impairment. So these vitamins and minerals can be very helpful for our brain functions as well. Okay. Of course, now we can see that we should say no to diet that is high in fat and high in sugar, because if you consume so much food that's high in fat and sugar, it will impair our memory, and it can also cause certain blood clots in our brain that will also lead to stroke, which we do not want. So not that we totally need to cut out all these foods from our diet, but we can reduce the consumption, and if we would like, sometimes here and there, we can still indulge a bit, but of course not to consume it over too much or like in every meal. Okay. Okay, so now let's see some of the ways that we can power up our food. Okay, so what do you think are some ways that we can have some better alternative to the food that we see here? Okay, so maybe let's go one by one. Now we see there's white rice. So how can we make this white rice better? How can we make it in a healthier option that's better for our brain? Okay, yes, brown rice. Okay, this is relatively easier example. Very good. Yes. Oh, I even see there's basmati rice. Okay, yes, basmati rice is it is not a wholemeal rice, but it's lower in the glycemic index as well. Okay. Yes. Thank you all for your answers. That's good. Yeah, we can change it to our brown rice. So what about, okay, let's see this instant noodles here. What can we change this to? What are some healthier alternatives that we can change this to? Brown noodles. Okay. Okay. Yes. I see some of you doing the fried chicken also with steamed chicken. Okay. Brown noodles can be replaced with kway teow. Yes, actually, in fact, it's very interesting when I go down to schools, because I also need to go down to schools as part of my job. So now the children, they're eating whole grain kway teow, whole grain bee tai mak, all these wholemeal options that in a like even a few years back, it wasn't even available in our market, but now we can even change it to our whole grain kway teow, our whole grain bee tai mak, all these options, our whole grain macaroni as well. Okay, homemade noodles. Okay, yeah. Okay, now how about the chips here? We can see the potato chips here. What can we change these chips to? What are some healthier alternatives? Dried fruits and nuts, yes. We can change our regular snacking chips habit for having it as a snack to our dried fruits and nuts. Yes, your baked potato as well. Of course, we want to reduce the amount of butter that we add into our baked potato, or some of the cream that we add in as well. We can use some herbs and spices to make it more flavorful. Wow, brown chips with potato skin. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe we can bake that on our own as well. Yes, change to baked and raw without the salt inside. Yes, all these are very, very good options that we can take into consideration. Okay, and now the chicken, the fried chicken here, what can we change it to? Okay, just now I saw someone saying replacing it by steamed chicken, of course, steamed chicken. And to reduce the amount of saturated fat, we can take away the layer of skin outside as well. Yes, remove the skin. Yes, steamed sweet corn. Okay. And grilling as well. Yes, grilling is also a healthier cooking method, or even pan frying that is healthier than our deep frying, which usually contains a lot of oil. Okay, what about this juice here this drink over here? This orange juice. How can we make it healthier? Okay, some of you free juice. Okay, or some other kind of chocolate drink. Okay. Okay, so one way, yes, we can change it to a fresher juice, or one way that we can make this drink healthier is that we can change it to eat our fruits, our whole fruits on its own. For example, instead of juicing an orange, we can eat an orange on its own. Because when we drink a juice in a juice form, it will cause also a spike in our blood glucose levels. And of course, it will cause a very quick release of this glucose into our brain. So it's not a slow release of energy into our brain as well. But of course, at times, if you want to juice your fruits or you want to drink your fruit juice, then what I recommend is that you can juice one of your fruits instead of juicing many, many different kinds of fruits together, because that would increase the amount of fruit load or the amount of glucose load that you're consuming into your body. So if you want to juice your fruits, it's still possible, but you can just juice one fruit instead of juicing many, many of your different kinds of fruits. Okay, and we can see that. Lastly, what about the chicken rice here? Sure, it's many of our favorite food. So how can we change this chicken rice to a healthier option? Okay, yes, again. So for this, we can incorporate many different ways. We can cook the white rice and change it to basmati rice, okay? Consume more cucumber. Yes, of course, we can ask for more cucumber at the side as it gives us our fiber and yeah, also the vitamins that our brain needs. Remove the skin. Yes, fresh chicken meat. Yes, thank you all for your answers. So all of you answered very well in this segment. Yeah, so we now know how we can make some healthier food substitutions. Okay, so now let's take a look at what are some of the recommendations that we provide. So many of these, like what you say, yes, changing to brown rice, eating your whole grain noodles, snacking on your nuts and some raisins instead of your potato chips, and even grilling your chicken instead of eating it deep fried with a lot of batter, and eating your fruits whole. And lastly, of course, is you can also meal prep your meal and yeah, to include some of your chicken, your quinoa, your fruits, and your vegetables as well. So all this, it also it comprises of your My Healthy Plate as well. So this is what you can include. Okay, so now let's move on. So how are the ways we can power up our food? Like what I already mentioned earlier, so we can go for whole grain options. We can choose lean protein to replace our saturated fat with our unsaturated fat. So instead of your baked foods or your processed food, we can go for our olive oil or avocado or even our salmon here. And lastly, to eat a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, so not all the same kind of fruits. Okay. Okay, so this part is the very interesting part. So I'll be doing a quick cooking demo later, but I'll be showing you the recipe first. So today's recipe will be whole grain chips with salsa. So this is a recipe that all of you can make after this talk. Yeah, if you want to eat some foods that can actually boost your brain and make it healthy, have a healthy meal, you can actually make this whole grain chips with salsa. So it's a relatively simple recipe that everyone can make. So I'll quickly go through the recipe with all of you before I do the cooking demo. So these are some of the ingredients that you'll need. So there's your multigrain tortilla, your corn kernels, Japanese cucumber, your tomatoes, your onions, raisins, your almonds, your cilantro, and your low-fat cream cheese, your lime juice as well. And lastly, also some of your cilantro or your, also known as like your coriander, which is used as garnishing. So the last one would be your garnishing that is optional. So if you like, you can quickly take a quick screenshot of this ingredients list, as later I will need to stop sharing my screen, so you might not be able to see this during my cooking demo later. Okay, so I'll give everyone a few seconds. If you want to screenshot, feel free to just screenshot the screen. Okay, Viv is asking, what is purple onion? Okay, so purple onion is basically the onion that we usually use that is purple in color. Yeah, so we can just use either the small onion, the small purple onion that we usually use. So it's an onion that is purple. Okay, so for the cilantro, we will use, in a recipe, we'll use 2 tablespoons of fresh cilantro, but the other 2 tablespoons will be for garnishing. So the one at the end, it is optional. If you want to use it for garnishing, then you can add it. Okay. Okay, everyone got a picture of it. Let me just quickly move on first to the instructions. Okay, so the method, what we can do is very, very simple. We can place the tortilla pieces into a toaster at 160 degrees to bake until it's slightly brown. Then we can combine our cream cheese and lime juice. And then we add in all our remaining ingredients. And lastly, we can mix well and serve with our tortilla chips. Okay, so everyone, you can also take a picture, a screenshot of this also, if you want to see the recipe, as I will be I'll stop sharing my video in a bit. Okay, so everyone just give me some time. So I will be transferring my camera so that all of you can have a view and have an angle to see my ingredients and what I'm cooking. So everyone just give me some time to set that up. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Hold on, ah. Okay, everyone can see my screen clearly and can hear me clearly? Hold on, ah. It's too small. Okay, is it better now? All good? Okay. Okay, so everyone can just see I have some ingredients on the table here. Okay, I'll just take it under the camera. So these are some of the ingredients that I've prepared just now earlier. Okay, and so this will be the bowl that I'm using. Okay, so firstly, we'll be combining the cream cheese and the lime juice. So I'll be adding the cream cheese, the low-fat cream cheese into the bowl. Okay, so cream cheese is good in protein and it's also high in calcium, but it contains a lot of saturated fat. So the saturated fat is the one that we want to try to avoid. So of course, we can go for a low-fat option. So we can opt for a low-fat option. So this applies to your milk as well. If you are drinking any dairy milk, you can go for the low-fat option. Okay, and now I'm adding in some of my lime juice that I freshly squeezed earlier. So of course, you can go for your freshly squeezed lime juice, like what I mentioned earlier, as compared to your lime juice that is already pre-packaged. Okay, and I'll be mixing these two ingredients together to make sure that it's well mixed. So this will be the base of our salsa recipe. Tea. Okay, it's almost all mixed up. Well, okay, and now it's almost all mixed up well. I'm going to add in some of my ingredients one by one. Okay, so firstly, I'll be adding in my corn. So everyone can see my corn here. So corn is actually considered a whole grain option as well. So it can be counted as part of your carbohydrates in my healthy plate. So for let's say if you do not want to eat brown rice that day or your quinoa, any of this, you can also add corn into your meal as a healthy staple. So I'll be mixing in my corn first. And just to note also for this corn, I'm actually using some frozen corns. So many people have this misconception that your fruits and vegetables, when they are frozen, is not as good as those that are fresh. But in fact, your fruits and vegetables, when they are frozen, they're actually picked at their highest and their most like nutrition ripe, their most ripe period. So actually, it's also very beneficial. And in fact, studies have shown that they can even consume even more calories, sorry, even more nutrients than your normal kind of fruits and vegetables that you just freshly eat just like that. Okay, and next I'll be adding in some of my tomatoes. Okay, so your tomatoes, they contain lycopene, which is a type of phytochemical. Okay, so just a question for everyone. So do you think that tomatoes, the lycopene in tomatoes, it will increase or decrease when you cook the tomatoes? So is tomatoes better when it's eaten raw, or is it better when it's eaten when you're cooked? Okay, it will increase. Sharil says that it will increase. Okay, anyone else? Okay, so Sharil is actually right. So the lycopene in your tomatoes will actually increase when you cook your tomatoes. But of course, there are still different kinds of vitamins. For example, your vitamin C, it's higher when your tomatoes are eaten raw. So of course, if you like, you can sometimes you can cook your tomatoes and sometimes you can eat it raw, so you can have a good balance of different kinds of nutrients. Okay, next I'll be adding in my cucumber. So for my cucumber also, I'm sure many of us, maybe if we usually cook, we'll know sometimes our cucumber, the water might leak from the cucumber. So what I did is that I actually marinated it in some salt first before actually, for around half an hour to 1 hour before actually rinsing it off with water. So that prevents the water from leaking from the cucumber, especially if you are not eating this salad immediately, sorry, this salsa immediately, but you're keeping it for a while first. Okay, and next I'll be adding in my raw onions. So raw onions is purple in color, so it contains your phytochemical, which is your anthocyanins. So for tomatoes, it's red, and it's your lycopene. For your onions, it's your anthocyanins. So your anthocyanins also can help to boost your memory, and it prevents your brain decline even as we age. Okay, so now it's all coming up very nicely. You can see here. Okay, and next I'll be adding in some of our dried fruits, dried raisins. Okay. Okay, so do you think that your dried fruits is actually healthier or your normal fresh fruits? Is dried fruits a healthy snack? Yes. Do you think dried fruits is a healthy snack? Yes. Sharil says yes. Anyone else? Okay, so yes, Sharil, you are right. So if without any flavor, Viv is also right. Yeah, so some of our dried fruits, they contain a lot of added sugars, for example, or some kind of oil also into our dried fruits. So we just need to make sure that we do not have all these added sugars inside. And of course, dried fruit is also naturally higher in sugar because it's dried. So we can also consume it with other different kinds of fruits and snacks. For example, in this salsa recipe, we are consuming it with many different kinds of food. And in fact, your dried fruit also, for the same amount of weight, it contains more nutrients and more minerals and vitamins as compared to your normal kind of fresh fruits. For example, this raisin, it contains more vitamins as compared to your grape. Okay, and next I'll be adding in my cilantro. So this is also your coriander. So I have chopped it into very fine pieces. Mix it all up. So of course, this provides your fiber also. And we can see there's many different colors coming up together. And now I'll be adding in some of the almonds. So almonds, yes, they're healthy snack. It's a healthy snack also. So we can mix it up all together. And we can look at it. It's almost all done. Okay, and just to show everyone, just now I have baked my wholemeal tortilla, so we can see it's all plated nicely here. And now I'll just be adding in the salsa into this small bowl here. I'll just be adding in. So of course, if you would like to add in more of your fruits or your different kinds of nuts, like your walnuts as well, feel free to add in all these different kinds of fruits. So it just contains many, many different kinds of vitamins and minerals. Okay, so I don't think I'll be adding in everything. Just adding in some here. Okay, and lastly, if you like, you can add some of your garnishing on top. So this is my cilantro that I also chopped it up a bit, so we can see here. So I just add it on top. Okay. And now we are done with our whole grain chips with salsa recipe, as you can all see here. It's a relatively very quick and simple recipe. So if let's say you want to meal prep, if you're going to the office, this is something that you can do. Or if you are scared or worried of the food becoming becoming very soggy, then you can definitely just chop up the ingredients first and mix up everything together when you are in the office or at work. Okay, so we are done with the recipe. So thank you everyone for still following me. So now I will just be switching back my computer and sharing my screen so that we can do a quick summary together before we all go. Okay, just give me some time for that. Okay, and I'm back. Okay, yes. Shahril has said, can use olive oil for the base. Yes, definitely you can. However, just to take note, because this one we add in some of the cream cheese already, so it might be a bit too watery. So if you want, you can also bake your tortilla pieces. You can drizzle some olive oil on top of your tortilla before baking it. Okay. Okay, so now let's just do a quick summary that, of course, your vital nutrients are important for optimal brain function in our brains. So we need to take note of all our carbohydrates, our proteins, and even our fats as well. So we need to eat like healthy fats and our nutrients and vitamins from our vegetables. So all these can help to protect our brain cells and they generate our happy chemicals in our brain. And this will help even in the long run. If let's say when we grow older in future, we are afraid of having Alzheimer's or some of our memory decline, then we can also follow a healthy diet. So we can use My Healthy Plate as a good reference guide every day when we eat. Okay, so that's it. And thank you everyone for being here with me today. So if you have any questions, feel free to just type into the chat box. So I will not be able to answer all of it due to the lack of time. So I only can answer at most 1 or 2 questions. And you can also help me to just scan this QR code over here to just give me your feedback on today's session. So that will be very much appreciated as well. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you. Okay, you have no other questions, you may leave the room. So I will just be staying here until everyone leaves the room. Okay, Link 2 has a question. So does eating omega-3 and 6 oil increase cholesterol? Okay, this is a very good question as well. So for cholesterol, what we need to take note of so there's 2 types of cholesterol. Of course, our good cholesterol and our bad cholesterol. So for our bad cholesterol, usually when it increase is more of our unhealthy kinds of fats like your trans fat or your saturated fat. So omega-3 and 6, it does not directly cause an increase in our cholesterol. However, eating too much of your omega-3 and 6 and containing too much calories can also affect us negatively. So therefore, we should still limit that consumption. But if we want to look at our cholesterol, that will come more from our saturated fats and our trans fat, which is from what I mentioned earlier, like our baked products or processed food, or some of our butter or margarine as well. So that's what we need to take more note of if we are thinking about our bad cholesterol levels. Okay. Okay, so how much protein is considered bad for us and what does it lead to? Okay, so like what I mentioned earlier, so for our protein consumption, we can actually just follow, let's say, My Healthy Plate as a guide. So that is the simplest and the easiest way that we know that we are consuming adequate amount of protein and not too much as well. So that's around 3 servings of protein. We can look at our palm size. Of course, we do not stack up our proteins. So this is the amount of protein that we consume for 1 serving. And so we eat 3 times of this a day. So this is the amount of protein that we can take in that is healthy for us. And how much is bad for us? So of course, what is bad for us is usually when we are consuming a high protein diet. So some diets out there, such as you have a limit to your kind of carbohydrates and you're consuming excessive amount of protein in the long run. For example, some of your bodybuilders, or your athletes, those that consume too much protein for a long period of time, they follow a high protein diet, that is actually, it will affect your kidneys as well. So increase your protein load on your kidneys to work. And yeah, it might damage your kidneys in the long run. So of course, the easiest way is to follow My Healthy Plate. But of course, if you want the exact amount of protein to consume every day, then probably you can go to HPB's website online to calculate, because that will also, you will need to take into account your amount of calories a day, which includes how much you exercise or how much you move in a day and how much your weight and your age as well. So there are different things to take into consideration if you want to know your exact amount of protein to eat. Yeah, so besides that also, if you want to know, you can just check with a dietitian if you know, or nutritionist as well that is registered. Yep, okay. Okay, so thank you everyone. If there's no other questions, I will be closing the room. Okay, thank you. I will be closing the room now. Thanks, SK. Thank you.